So the first movie, Bas Ya Bahar, or The Cruel Sea, subtitled, follows the life of a teenager, a boy who's coming into manhood. His name is Saad, and Saad is in love with a neighboring girl. Her name is Noura. Saad comes from a very poor family. His dad used to be a barrel diver. He worked for over 20 years, but he suffered an injury from a shark attack, and he's been in bad luck ever since. His mom, Latifa, is the family's breadwinner. She works as a maid or a helper for the neighbors. Saad, as he's getting into adulthood, he wants to go into the pearl diving profession because he expect good fortune to come if he found Dana, which is a big pearl, and that would help him to marry the girl he likes and get his family out of poverty. His father, because of his injury, is forbidding him from entering this profession, and that's where the story starts. We can chat about where it goes later.
And what did you think of the film? Did you enjoy it?
So that movie, I've always heard about it, and
Hmm.
unfortunately, I haven't seen it before. Like, I'm glad that we did this, so I got to see this movie. I've heard about it from my dad, because this is the my dad would say, and even I talked to him before this recording, and he said that's the last movie he went to the theater to see because he wanted to see, and that was from 1972. So the last movie he actually wanted to see in theaters. Uh, uh, I really liked it. I really liked to see like a glimpse of what life was like back then. And this is even not that long ago because the movie came out in 72 and was depicting life, 30 years earlier because pearl diving stopped around the mid 1940s, which
Hmm.
was a little bit shocking when I was researching it.
Yeah, I did like it. Um, I think I did find it a bit slow and repetitive, like with the dialogue, but I thought it was quite interesting in its social commentary. It was sort of looking at it was depicting poverty in Kuwait prior to the discovery of oil, when it was mostly dependent upon the sea. It had some interesting commentary about class and arranged marriages, and I thought there were specific sequences that were really compelling. I was moved by the relationship between the son and his father, and the plight of many of the characters trying to survive in this world with pretty limited resources. I really like the underwater sequences. I thought they were quite, I don't know, sort of almost otherworldly. I thought the style of filmmaking was interesting. It reminded me a lot of like the neo-realist films of post-war Italy, where it was just kind of like everyday life. It wasn't big, it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't larger than life. It was very much everyday life, trying to survive in the world. And the way the sea was shot, I thought was interesting. It had like almost this kind of like godlike fury and power. And the way the streets were shot was sort of, I felt very, I don't know, isolating. Like felt like almost this empty city at times. The characters felt kind of trapped within it. So yeah, it was a bit slow, and I think it wasn't the film's fault, but the version we saw was a version that looked like it had been taped off television and uploaded to YouTube. So it was pretty bad quality. So I think if you'd seen it in a cinema in a proper print, it would have been much better. But even with that, I think I'm really glad I saw it. It was a really interesting window into a culture I'm not familiar with and a time that even is past for that culture.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely cool. You were telling me that you like the underwater scenes, and it was like, what underwater scenes? I couldn't see really much from the YouTube version. It was very blurry.
It was blurry, yeah. I wish, at least for those scenes, I had seen a proper print. But I was looking it up, and apparently that was quite novel, even for the time. Like there had been underwater scenes shot in Hollywood films, like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, I think was from the 50s. That had underwater scenes, but certainly not in Arab filmmaking. That had never been tried. And the director was basically like, I have no idea how I'm going to do that. I'm just going to figure it out when we get to the water. And they had to basically
Yeah.
rig up a machine that was capable of filming underwater, and just did it all on the fly, which I think is, yeah, pretty bold.
I want to just give a little bit tidbits about this movie I forgot to mention is that this movie won an award at the Damascus Film Festival, the
Hmm.
Tehran International Film Festival, and won a prize at the Venice International, like, I think, film prize or something.
Hmm.
So those are also cool things that the movie got.
Mm.
In terms of the story, I think it was trying to like to depict multiple stories at once, put them all together, like the injuries that people suffer from pearl diving,
Mm.
the class, as you said, the class divide. What I don't know if it came through the translations, but I like did notice those things like listening to the movie. Is that Nora's dad works as a pearl merchant, and he's going into the pearl diving, basically, to try to get closer to that specific like part of society. Like, I don't know if it was translated as he a pearl merchant or not.
I don't remember that. I mean, I knew he was a merchant. I didn't realize he was involved in the pearl diving trade or rise through the ranks.
Yeah, it kind of like there are things like I would notice from the culture that this movie kind of like showed me why we have those things.
Mm.
So one thing is that in Kuwaiti language there are different words to describe different types of pearls.
Oh, okay.
And I thought it was really cool in this movie that they utilized those different types of names for the different sizes, shapes of pearls. And his goal was specifically to get Dana, which is like a big pearl,
Mm.
to basically to offset the poverty of his family. So I thought it was really cool. He wasn't just saying a pearl; he was saying the big pearl.
Right, right.
So that was really cool. That I saw in the movie.
Yeah, I don't know what or who did the translation for the version I watched, whether it was filmed in another country and translated by their translator, but I'm sure I missed a lot of that stuff. I was trying to find a bit of information about this film. There wasn't a lot. I found a couple of reviews from back when it was first released. There was some information about the awards it received and the historical context. But I found a bit of an interview from the filmmaker who made several more films. I think he made 3 films in total. Kuwait. He made this, The Marriage of Zine. I think it was a Lebanese poem, and it was filmed in Sudan, which wasn't evident from the original Wikipedia article, but I showed you the video and you said, no, this is definitely a Sudanese dialect or a Sudanese version of Arabic, which obviously I wouldn't know,
Yeah.
but later found out that the director filmed it in Sudan. And then there was a third film, I can't remember the title, but it was set on the Silk Road. So I think it was a historical drama. But his main motivation for making the film was this perception that Kuwait was this very rich and prosperous country, which, it probably was to some extent at the time. But everyone was asking, do you drive around in fancy cars and is there just money paving the streets? When he was visiting, I think he studied in America for a bit. And he came home and said, well, yes, we have fortunes because of the oil boom to some extent, but we also struggled a lot. My parents struggled to survive, to scratch a living from the sea. And I want to show that. I want other people outside of our country to know what we went through. And also, I want future generations to know what our parents went through before the oil boom, because this was a big part of our identity. This was who we were. And the film, I thought it was really interesting because a lot of films about the past are very drenched in nostalgia. Like, this is what we were at our best. Whereas this is very much a film of like, this is the past, but it's very much, there's a bitterness to it. There's almost a sort of a divorce from the sea. Like, the sea is this really important part of our identity and it's where we get our bounty, but it's also caused us a lot of pain and heartache. And we're willing to part from it and find a living somewhere else, which eventually became oil. So I thought that was kind of interesting that it wasn't this romantic view of the past. It was very rooted in realism and suffering and this acceptance that, times change and that can be a good.
Yeah, it's very cool. And the movie was also a big success, at least locally. Is that what I've heard from my dad, from my mom, from my aunts and uncles? And it is, made an impact and people really like showing the hardness of that part of the past, like what people went through, especially for people who were around, who experienced that economy before the oil boom.
Hmm.
And like he did hear some of the reaction from the people who experienced it firsthand. Like they did like what I've heard is that he got a lot of pushback about a specific scene in the movie, which we can talk about later when we get to it.
Hmm.
But overall was very well received, like how he depicted some, what people went through,
Hmm.
how much the economy was really dependent on the sea, whether it's as merchants or as pearl divers.
That's really interesting. I couldn't really find anything about the reaction to the film within Kuwait. So it's good to know that at least it was received well in some places. Because I wasn't sure, because parts of the film seem kind of critical of society, or Kuwaiti society, or small town society at the time, in terms of like the suffering it created, the division between the classes, and the treatment of women. I thought that the marriage sequence of Nora, the arranged marriage, was quite like frightening, because it was very much told from her perspective as a woman who didn't want to get married. It's very much framed as a tragedy, like these two star-crossed lovers that are torn apart by social pressures and social conditions. So I was wondering if you knew much about the reaction to that particular critique of Kuwaiti society.
I didn't hear much about that. That wasn't the controversial scene. There was a little bit. What I've heard about it is that it's over sensational. Sorry, let me. It's over dramatized.
Hmm.
Those types of arranged marriages. So like that. I don't know if you noticed is that he was struggling with her, right?
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden he was praying.
Yeah.
So this is apparently a tradition, is that you would take like whatever the pride is covered with, and you use it to pray before you consummate the wedding.
Mm.
And what I've heard is that I think it's true, but I think like what he depicted is true, but people thought around that time it's not how typically it is, because girls typically will be trained to be obedient and then not to be that aggressive. But that's not the controversial one, the scene that I wanted to mention.
Well,
But that was horrific.
yeah.
That one was horrific. Like the rape scene was horrific. It was horrific to see it. Uh, the fact that people around that time dismiss it as part of life is speaks more about the harshness of what people went through back then.
And the whole sequence of Nora being processed through the crowd with the garment over her head is quite overwhelming. Like the repetitive singing, it's almost has the effect of like waves crashing, like just this relentless torrent of social pressure. Like the whole community gets together to force this thing to happen, or ensure that this ritual is consummated. And yeah, I don't know. I really felt for Nora. It's not like it shows how much she struggles, and it felt like she was very sort of defeated through most of it, like she was just walking along. But then at the end, when she struggles, it was quite scary to see how viscerally afraid she was. And it's a very quick shot of her lying back, but it's very scary in its implications of what happens to her. So yeah, that was sad. Like it's a very sad film, and it's both its male and female protagonists are struggling against the system they live in.
The wedding also, there is a big disconnect between the songs. I don't know if also was subtitled or not, but the
No,
songs
the
were
song
religious
wasn't.
in nature.
Right.
The songs, if you listen to what they're saying, they're like religious blessings,
Hmm.
in either sides, for him and for her. And those songs still continue. They're still being used for
Mm.
weddings. And I find it a little bit, after watching this movie, I find it a little bit hard to listen to the songs again. But those are like typical wedding songs that people would play. They're like they have religious undertones, right? Blessings for the groom and the bride. What was even creepier is the mom looking in and trying to see her, like she's looking to check if her daughter gets raped. It's like really unsettling, like
Mm.
the whole ordeal with the mom.
What was the controversial scene you?
Oh, toward the end, the pearl divers were, they thought he overblown the big clam that caused his hand to be stuck. So actual pearl divers, they saw their reactions that, well, that would never happen. It wouldn't be stuck in that big cloud.
Ah, right, right. Okay. Unrealistic.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
people die, but they wouldn't die from that specifically. By the way, I do have a little bit more info if you want to ask about anything, because I did ask my dad to give me a little bit more info about some of the things, some of the traditions. Like the thing that they did when they were waiting for the post to come back. Do you see that ritual?
Waiting for who to come back, sorry?
The post when the women were waiting
Oh,
for the
yeah.
post, they did like we I got some interesting tidbits about
What were they
those.
doing? Were they grabbing the sand or something?
Yeah. Do you want to go to this right now?
Yeah, yeah, sure, go for it.
So yeah, do you want to set up the scene?
So this is towards the end of the film when the pearl divers have been on the sea for several months, and many of the villagers are waiting for it to return because one of the boats has returned, and they said the other one's on their way. So I think the women were on their knees, sort of grabbing at the sand. I can't remember exactly what they were doing, but the villagers are all sort of gathered around the horizon, looking for the boat to arrive.
So they did three things, and they found out what they mean. So they threw something in the water. I don't know if you noticed that. So
Oh, I
that thing,
remember.
which is like,
And the cat, like they put a cat under it or something.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So the first thing they threw, which is like a weird thing, they threw a laxative.
Hmm.
And the reason is because they thought around that time, if you threw the laxative, it will make the sea more, I don't know, forthcoming, and will bring the missing people back.
Yeah.
Uh, they they did put a burned like palm. What is it called? Like not a palm leaf, but it kind of like a branch of a palm tree,
Mm.
and they burned it and they threw it. And because around that time, also people used to always treat sick people by burning their wounds. So it's kind of the same idea. You're burning the sea. And the final thing is that they dipped the cat in the water, and they were waiting for the cat to cry. So if the cat cries, means the owner of the cat is coming back. So
Ah,
these
okay.
are weird rituals that I never knew about, and I thought they were they were odd. I
Mm.
had to ask my parents about them.
And were they true?
Yeah, these are all true. These
Wow.
are things people used to do, 100 years ago. Other interesting tidbits. I don't know if you noticed in the movie. So the dad was in debt. I don't know if you caught that part.
He was in debt. Yeah, I caught that. Yeah, to the
So
captain.
yeah, to the cat, yeah, no. So the way they used to be compensated, the pearl divers, they get a loan before they go before
Mm.
they go pearl diving, and then once they get back, they would pay out their loan, and whatever they have left over is like whatever they get like on top of it. If they have a bad season, they will be indebted uh,
Mm.
to the captain.
Right.
So because of his injury, he got nothing, and he was still indebted from that time.
Oh God,
Yeah,
that's tough.
that was interesting tidbit. Another interesting thing that I also had to get clarification on is that the goat scene. I found it like, why were they, taking their goats out, and like for the guy to take them? So it turns out. This is an actual also tradition. People used to keep goats at their houses, but every morning a shepherd will come in, collects all the goats, from the village, take them outside, for them to graze or get water or whatever they need, and brings them back at the end of the day. So that's something people apparently used to do every day.
And do you know whereabouts this film was meant to be set? Is that revealed in any of the in any of the dialogue?
I think Quaid in general, like Quaid was like basically back then was like between east and west, the city itself,
Hmm.
and it's not like that big of a city. I don't think they specifically stated whether it's like the east or west. I would assume it's more of a west.
So when you say Kuwait in general, do you mean Kuwait City or just general?
Kuwait City, when it was like, I don't know, maybe 20,000 people living there,
Wow.
and like there were like predominantly two neighborhoods.
Okay.
Either you're from the east or the west side,
Yeah.
but they're still connected. I don't think he specified the director. I don't know if you mentioned the name of the director.
Uh,
Should I say it
yeah,
now, and you want
you
to
better
answer
say
that
it.
at the beginning?
Don't let me say it.
Okay, let me give a rundown of who's in the movie if you want to insert at the beginning.
Sure.
So this movie was directed by Khalid Al Siddiq and written by Abdurrahman Al Saleh. And the movie stars a lot of people who became famous later on. And I definitely was watching the movie. I recognize a lot of them. So Msaad, which is the protagonist, was played by Mohammed Al Mansour. The dad was played by Saad Al Farhi. The mom was played by Hayat Al Fahad, and creepy groom was played by Ali Al. All of them had distinguishing careers in Kuwait media in the years that followed.
Mm. Yeah, and apparently they're all basically the same age in this film, and they had to use like makeup and basically just their performances to convey that they were the mother and father.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah,
I did
yeah.
like I like the performance of the dad. There's a few scenes where he is struggling to decide whether he lets his son go or not, and he knows his pride is injured and he wants to provide for his family, and that's very much what manhood is for that family. But he also loves him and doesn't want to let him get hurt, and he finally sort of concedes and lets him go. The son hugs him, and then there's just a flash of the son as a child running up and hugging his dad, and that really tugged at my heartstrings. I thought that was quite moving, and just the facial acting of him looking out at the water and just praying to God that his son is safe. I thought that was all really.
Yeah, I really like that. I like the dynamics also between the mom and how she was looking out for her son and her would-be daughter-in-law, and she was like trying to also like care for her by not letting her suffer any scandal in that specific village.
Yeah, I think that's another theme of the film is the relationship, the parents' relationship to the child and being able to let them go. That struggle of like letting them go outside your protection so they can become an adult and how like gut wrenching that can be. And when you know how high the stakes are, so that distance when they're all waiting for the ship to return is really, really tough. We're sort of winding up, I think, on this film, but I was curious what you thought of the ending when it's revealed that Masoud has not survived, but one of his friends is able to deliver one of the pearls so that his death wasn't in vain, and then the mother casts it in anger.
And she said probably it was really heartbreaking, and she said probably the best line in the movie,
Hmm.
and it was a shame that what was mistranslated. So what she said she was speaking to the sea. She said you switched the best Dana, which is Dana's the biggest pearl, the best pearl. So you switched the best Dana, the best pearl, and you gave me this, worthless piece of stone,
Mm.
which is the actual pearl.
Yeah.
She threw it at the sea toward that. It was heartbreaking.
She'd rather have her son, the real pearl.
Yeah, and then this piece of rock. Did you find it interesting that when she threw it, I don't know, I got a flashback of Titanic.
Uh, no. Oh, I don't. I don't think
I
so. It didn't
I
occur.
think they
I
were.
guess. I guess
It
the
was like,
fact of the value of the stone. Yeah, it is. It does recall Titanic, or
I,
maybe Titanic is recalling this film.
yeah, but okay, it's both movies are about like searching for that expensive, jewelry, right?
Mm.
The what is it? The hard diamond, right? Is that what it's called in Titanic?
Yeah. I can't remember
Heart of the
exactly.
ocean.
The heart of the ocean. Yeah.
Heart of the ocean and Titanic, and here they were looking specifically for the big pearl. And in both cases, they throw it back at the ocean for two separate reasons.
Yeah, but I think in both cases it is this realization that the real precious thing was this relation with another person.
Yeah.
That was it took them a while to realize, and that's where we sort of get the title of the film, which I've seen sort of different versions of. The English translation is The Cruel Sea, but I think you wrote that
Hmm.
the direct translation is like Enough Sea,
Yeah, that would be it. Enough.
which I think kind of speaks to that message of like Kuwaiti society moving past the sea as the source of its life and bounty towards something else.
I think the enough part in this translation is not that enough as in enough we're moving on. I think it's enough misery.
Oh, okay.
That's
Yeah.
what it's implied by this type of enough.
Sure.
Uh, and you see it from like the different relationships people had with the sea. They depend on it, and
Mm.
also like this weird rituals they would do toward the sea to get their loved ones back. The life revolves around it, and you got the goods and also you get the ills coming from.
Yeah.
You did ask about like their gear. I do have a list of what they mentioned in the movie and what he got. If you wanna like touch on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me.
So he in the movie he did list like the things he gave his son. So I asked and I got like exactly what they mean. So he got the nose clip. He got like the special pad the pearl divers use to sleep on boat. He got like the net thing, the basket that people wear around their necks to put their the clams in. He got the special suit, and he also got the weight from his dad. So all those things he got from his dad, handed down before he went on the pearl diving.
I couldn't figure out, did they have any kind of breathing apparatus, or were they just holding their breath that whole time they
Nope,
dived?
you hold your breath. So the way it works is that they have that weight.
Mm.
You hold your breath. You go down, and then they would tug on the rope, and people would pull them back in.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's why he died
Mm.
because he couldn't get back up, and he had the weight on him to keep him down.
All right, we might move on to our next film, if that's all right.
Yeah, let's go.